Sarah, I would like to turn the show over to you now. You and I taped a podcast on Friday before Labor Day. We had a lot of thoughts. I was beginning my journey with my auto harp, and you went along with it, and people did not enjoy it.
Okay. So people didn't like our takes, and I think on Friday morning we had a hot take. I actually think people, I'm not sure if they not saying they misunderstood us, but nobody wanted to hear any criticism of Joe Biden. But to be fair, we were criticizing him kind of in this just happened. We were thinking it through. We were talking about what didn't land with us. Tim, I have a coda to your piece. No, so if I had a hot take there, I've got a fully baked take now about what it was that I think I had a problem with. And I don't
want to tell people what my piece was first before
I want you to do your piece, but I just want to say to people, there was people who were like, oh, I turned it off because I didn't want to listen to you guys criticize Joe Biden. I really want you to listen to what we're about to say because I want to talk this through. We come in good faith. And so, Tim, you talk about your piece and then I want to add on to that.
Please do not turn us off, is what you're saying. Please don't. Keep us on. It's good. It's good. The content's hot. The content is going to be engaging. You're going to feel warm at the end. I tweeted about your guys's, I guess it was the newsletter that led to the podcast, just with a quote from JVL's comments. I didn't really overdo it, but I thought I just stated that I basically agreed with this notion that I think that Joe Biden has a responsibility to, as president, reach out to all Americans, even the MAGA Americans. And that on balance, that is probably the smart thing for him to do. People disagree with that very strongly. I was ratioed. And I do think part of it is this misunderstanding, Sarah, to your point, that it's which I think is very strange, that that people who read the Bulwark would think that the Bulwark does not think that MAGA politicians should be criticized. I do think MAGA's politicians and leaders and influencers should all be criticized. But I think the point JVL was trying to make last week and that you were on the podcast was that the president's responsibilities maybe sometimes different from what advocates' responsibilities or media's responsibilities are. And so what I want, and that, when by telling the president that, he should reach out, the critics were telling us that we were appeasing them and that we have no choice but to crush them and defeat them. And so I wrote in the newsletter this morning, essentially in short, that I think that there's space between appeasement or whatever that would be, which is hey, MAGAs, welcome to our democratic experiment. We love and respect you and will not compete against you. And I think that would be appeasement. There's space between that and saying that all MAGA Americans are a threat to America, which I don't think Joe Biden really meant to say, but it's kind of what it seemed like he said. And then he cleaned it up the next morning. And so what I offered was, here's another approach, which is to viciously attack Donald Trump and the MAGA leaders who are con men, who are lying to them, to their own voters, and explain how they are making their lives worse, or in some cases are responsible for their deaths because they didn't get vaccinated or because they got shot charging the Capitol over a man-child's lies. And that maybe we should use the fact that Donald Trump is a phony, a charlatan who doesn't actually give a fuck about his own supporters, to our advantage to try to reach out to some of those supporters. And for the president, because he's the one best suited to do it, to say, I want to be the president for everybody, even though the people that didn't vote for me. And in particular, my message to the people who didn't vote for me is that I actually want to make your life better. And Donald Trump doesn't give a fuck about you. He just cares about, the new carpeting that they put in down at Mar-a-Lago. And maybe 97% of the MAGA Americans would say, thanks, but no thanks, Joe Biden. You are a pedophile who likes to sniff girls' hairs. But maybe 3% of the 100% would say, you know what? This guy actually makes a good point. He cares about me. And so instead, I'm not going to vote this time because I will never vote for an abortionist. Or instead, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. And guess what? People do that all the time. There were people that voted for Donald Trump in 2016 and then Joe Biden in 2020. We ran a whole campaign trying to reach out to them. So these people do exist. We should try to reach them. It is good for society. It is good for politics. And it is good for defeating fascism. It is not appeasement to try to reach out to these people. And, end. That was basically my newsletter take. A lot of people don't like that, though. They think that we should just say, you all should go to hell.
Sure. And I get that. And so let me say that, I was trying to figure out why I didn't love Joe Biden's speech about democracy. And I think I said this on the Secret Podcast, it wasn't the lighting, it wasn't the Marines standing behind him, both of which became sort of side dramas in the discourse. I was listening on the radio in the car as I drove home from a baseball game. So I wasn't watching Twitter. I didn't have any visuals. It was just Joe Biden's voice filling the car, making point after point that I believe to be true, right? So, Donald Trump and his lies are a threat to democracy and the rule of law. Check. Agree. Like, we're at a dangerous moment and need to be clear-eyed about the threats to democracy. Check. I agree. Election denialism is a threat to democracy. Check. Political violence is wrong and a threat to democracy. Right? Double check. So I was like, why would I keep wincing? And the reason I kept wincing is this term MAGA Republicans. I did not like the term MAGA Republicans, and not because there isn't a specific thing about MAGA Republicans. It is that he was talking, when he was talking about voters, he was trying to do, I understand what they were trying to do, right? They were trying to separate out the insurrectionists from the good old Romney, Reagan, normie Republicans, right? They're trying to do that. So that makes sense what they're trying to do. But I would say that the bifurcation should be different. And so I want to offer this as good faith advice more than not just analysis of why I didn't like it. I think, and Tim, you're getting at this, but you didn't say it explicitly. I thought maybe you were almost going to say it. Joe Biden should take the fight as hard and aggressively as anybody can, straight at Donald Trump, straight at Kevin McCarthy, straight at the politicians who tolerate him, the leaders who are lying to people, but he should not go after voters. And this is when this is where JVL was when I was talking to him on Friday and he was hug it out. I was like, part of the reason I was finding that compelling, I think, is that I do think that what are you trying to do to save democracy? To save democracy, you are building the biggest, broadest political coalition possible to keep the bad guys out of power, which means that you shouldn't give the other side narratives. That's why the deplorables was a backfire. And so when it was MAGA Republicans, the politicians, the liars, Donald Trump, yes, but that wasn't it quite. It was the voters too. And you could say well, some of them are insurrectionists. That's true. Some of them are insurrectionists. But I think what the focus group work for the last several years has showed me is just how much on a spectrum so many of these people are. How, we tend to think that they have full political awareness, that they are following the news super closely, and many of them aren't. And also, I understand how a Democrat might see the distinction between a MAGA Republican and a normie Republican. But the Republicans don't necessarily see that distinction themselves from inside their world. Right? What is a MAGA Republican? That's the kind of thing. And so for me, it is, and JVL and I have this fight a lot where I say, it's go after the politicians, not the voters. And so I am not talking about appeasement. And you know what? If that speech, I went and reread the speech, so much in it that I agree with. But it was actually more of a missed opportunity than I'm objecting to specific things. Talk about Doug Mastriano. Talk about, if you're he got political at the end and talked about a bunch of achievement, that's fine. I think you should absolutely be doing that out in the world. But in this speech about democracy, the threats to democracy, you have candidate after candidate, Doug Mastriano, Carrie Lake, Blake Masters, people who are denying the elections. Say their names. Go after them. Go after her. They're the ones telling the lies. So it is not, sometimes people say, well, Sarah, you want him to go on offense, and then when he does, you disagree with it. You criticize him. That's not what I'm doing. I am saying that you cannot go on offense after voters. That never works. You've got to go on offense against these individual people who are telling the lies. And that is how Joe Biden, okay, go ahead, JVL. I'll step down now, but that is the
auto harp is over. The auto harp is ready to go, is ready to bring out the machete.
Look, I mean, I just want to, I'll wait till Sarah finishes drinking because I don't want her to spit all over her computer. It sure works for Republicans. Republicans go after 52% of the country all day long, every day. Look at these college graduates with their elites. Look at these pedophiles. Look at these Black Lives Matter people. They demonize the country, and it works all the time. I really wonder about, in a very hard-headed way, about this question. So people forget the Hillary Clinton deplorables, not you forgetting, you I'm sure remember this, but the Hillary Clinton deplorables speech was an attempt to separate bad MAGAs from good Republicans, right? I mean, that was her trying to provide the Republican Party with an off-ramp for Trump. It was her saying Paul Ryan is not like this. Like, sure, you've got a third of the country which is crazy, or a third of the party which is crazy, the deplorables, but the other 2/3 are like normal people who are trying, and that didn't work. And as you say, the Biden thing may not work in his attempts to separate people from the party. I guess my question is why. Well, let me ask the question, Tim. Why is it that going after and othering voters is something that clearly works for Republicans, but we think it can't work for Democrats? Go ahead, Tim.
I've raised my hand. It doesn't. It didn't. This is just like a part of the Donald Trump myth, right? Like Mitt Romney won more votes than Donald Trump. Hillary was like a uniquely bad candidate. Like there are a lot of reasons why Donald Trump won. A lot of the voters that he lost because he's an ass. Like I think the whole conceit of like his tweets of like, oh, people don't like him because of his tweets. You hear from these people in the social focus groups. Like there are suburban women, there are younger people, there are people in my life who are Republicans who like really the thing that they don't like most about Donald Trump is not the particular policies. It's the fact that he's a dick. Okay, so like I don't know that it really worked. We'll never really know, right? On balance, like how many people he brought in, because there's certainly he attracted.
It's working for DeSantis, right? DeSantis is not confining his criticisms to Democratic politicians, right? It's whole groups and classes of voters.
That's true.
Joe Biden. So listen, the 2020 election was closer than it should have been, but Donald Trump lost it. Joe Biden won it by 7 million votes. And Joe Biden had a unity pitch, and Donald Trump had a divisive pitch.
Right.
And Democrats won the Senate and the House. And so the idea that you're right that like in a primary and like there's certainly no electoral price, and you're right that somebody like DeSantis is probably going to get reelected pretty easily in Florida. But like I don't think that it's true that it's not turning off some people. And the point is like we're clawing for margins here.